Zack. He's the head of go-to-market for OpenAI, has a successful track record leading sales, revenue, and go-to-market functions over his 10-year-plus career in tech. And of course, there's no shortage of buzz and excitement about OpenAI's advancements with ChatGPT, DALL-E, and their expanding partnership with Microsoft and more. So we all can't wait to hear what's in store from OpenAI in 2023. And I know everyone wants to get right to it. So thanks and welcome, Zack, from OpenAI.
Thanks so much, Mike. Yeah, thank you all for making the time. I have a deck. I'll go through it. Everyone has updated pretty quickly in the last even few weeks on what OpenAI is. And given the nature of what we're building, there's only so much that I can talk about. That said, I'll move through the gears and then we'll leave a bunch of time, hopefully for questions. If I can't answer something, I'll just say I can't answer it. And the extent to which I can provide my own personal opinion, I'll caveat it that, it is just my personal opinion. But hopefully the content in the meantime is valuable. Okay, we start every presentation by reminding people that OpenAI's mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. And I think more than ever, that's an important thing to reiterate. Microsoft is on that journey with us. Our customers are on that journey with us. And I think keeping that front and center is a reminder of why alignment is such an important problem. Trust and safety is such an important problem, sort of above and beyond what commercialization does and what go-to-market does, which really is to enable this mission. Okay, so I do think some of what I'll tell today is probably obvious, but it bears repeating because I think it's helpful for everyone to sort of remember what OpenAI is trying to, how we're basically trying to go to market and what you should expect from us. And ideally it'll frame some of the follow-on questions. The platform, which is the API, hosts our technologies via API endpoints to allow developers tools to build transformative products and services. And the platform is our primary go-to-market today. So while ChatGPT has taken the world by storm, DALL-E Labs did the same. Most of our customers, certainly those that pay money, engage with us through the API. And we see this as sort of the foundation of the business, because we want to enable the products and services that reach the masses. And so the platform strategy remains our primary focus. But I'll talk about what else you can expect from us this coming year. The platform today has, and many of you know this, a set of what we call modalities, and the crown jewel of those modalities is GPT, which has gone through its various iterations. And of course, the GPT-3 that you all know today is very different than the GPT-3 that we started selling when I joined 2 years ago. It is the same name, but really it doesn't share many other similarities. It's so updated from the original. And GPT is a large language model that can generate, summarize, extract, interpret, transform, now translate very well. For those of you who haven't tried it, translation is really good, and search text. And we'll talk in a little bit about how it's searched. We talk about these as sort of a capability matrix. So every modality at OpenAI that you can access in the endpoint enables these capabilities. And when we talk to founders, developers, large enterprises, we use these words as sort of the most discrete way to describe the capability taxonomy. Codex. It's a large language model that has been trained using open source code that can generate, explain, translate, optimize, and fix code. A lot of people here have interacted with Copilot, on which Codex is trained. You can also access Codex through the API and build similar or exciting products. DALL-E 2. DALL-E 2 is a large model that has been trained using licensed image data that can generate and edit images. And what's exciting about DALL-E, and most people don't know this, I think still because labs the application layer didn't showcase this. DALL-E is now available in the API, and DALL-E API can actually do some pretty incredible things. So everyone knows about the text to image capabilities that it has, creating a castle in Ireland with the yellow water polo slide, etc. This was very exciting 6 months ago. This is almost old hat now, and we accept that that's how fast the world is moving. But the DALL-E in-painting and variations capabilities are really exciting. So this is what's enabling a lot of really exciting work within our customers' applications who power various design tools. And a lot of you have sort of interacted with DALL-E in the labs environment, but maybe you're not familiar with the API offering. And variations is obviously a really exciting feature with DALL-E. Whisper. So Whisper goes live in the API next week, I think. It's a large model that's been trained using licensed speech data. And by the way, this is not some subtweet. I'm not saying licensed. It's just important to note that our models are trained on licensed data, and the models themselves are very above board, that can transcribe and interpret speech. And Whisper is a state-of-the-art ASR product. We also have, although not in the API, Clip, which can turn an image into text. Many of you may have interacted with it, embedded in other models. It's open source. Whisper, by the way, is also open source, but we are going to host it in the API per popular demand. So we have these 4 modalities. This year, we're going to continue to add modalities. So you can expect to see text to fill in the blank or fill in the blank to text. Most models will be bidirectional. You can also expect to see us upgrade each of these modalities. So there are tons of rumors flying around about DALL-E 2.1. When will it come out? I'm kidding. But we will expect we probably will upgrade each of these modalities throughout the year. And then there are a bunch of advanced API endpoints, and I think this is probably what separates the API today. In addition to just the strength of GPT-3 and 3.5, our instruction following, our fine tuning, our embeddings v2, and edit and insert endpoints, really, really competitive advantages for our customers. And for those of you who haven't explored these endpoints, I strongly encourage you to do so, because they can help you not only differentiate our service versus other large language models, but your own service. So fine tuning is a great way to take advantage of your data. Embeddings is an incredible way to take advantage of your data. Edit and insert allows, and instruction following allow for really rich prompt engineering and application differentiation. You can also probably expect from us some more advanced API endpoints this year. Imagine a world where maybe we give more access to weights to allow for more customizability by ML engineers. That's something that's pretty high priority for us. Or a world potentially where you have dedicated capacity. Okay, and then of course we have ChatGPT, and this is sort of like a teaser to what Sam has tweeted about. So this is public domain, and I'm not saying anything new. Our first party product. What will the world look like where OpenAI is distributing an application itself? And ChatGPT is a web app powered by a customized GPT 3.5 engine, which by the way all of you have access to. And so anytime someone gets excited, how do I build ChatGPT? We say, well, the endpoint is available. Admittedly, the ChatGPT API endpoint itself is not yet available, but the 3.5 endpoint exists, and you can use it today. And you can generate, summarize, extract, interpret, transform, and translate text in a beautiful web app. And this was an amazing learning for us because we truly we launched it as a research preview, and people got really excited, my mom included. And it's sort of updated everyone, well, I suppose it served as a reminder that the application layer is really important, and how people engage with these models is almost just as important as the models themselves, right? The more things change, the more they stay the same. The software, the application experience matters a ton. I'm gonna pause. I have more content, but the truth is, usually what happens is we fill up a bunch of this time with questions. I'm again happy to answer anything that I can answer. If I can, I'll just be blunt and tell you, look, I can't answer this. Given that this content is going to be shared, there's not much that we can do in terms of demo and previews, but I'll speak to whatever I can around anything else.
All right, Zach, we've got a bunch of questions for you, and I'll start kind of firing them off. So one is from Bach. What is the main difference between the models underlying GPT-3 and ChatGPT?
Yeah, that's a great question. So GPT has a family of models. I'll just stop sharing. It's probably easier. GPT has a family of models, which you've probably seen on the website. They sort of, there's GPT-3, Ada, DaVinci, Curie, Babbage. Then we've updated now to have DaVinci 003, which is effectively 3.5. ChatGPT is a slightly more aligned and updated model that actually just is trained on dialogue. So it's a model that's really specifically designed to sort of interact with you as a human would in the form of speech, which is why it feels like a more natural chatbot, and I think why people are so inclined to it. But it actually is mostly just DaVinci 003.
Thank you. Another question here. Will OpenAI continue to focus on the foundational models, or do you see an evolution over time to building more custom apps?
Yeah. So I think the focus will almost always exclusively be on foundation models. And you can imagine us just sort of filling out that modality tree. So think about the other ways that humans engage with the world. We hear, we speak, we touch, etc. There's probably a robotics component, but the truth is we will probably always focus on the general models. We want other people to do the rest. I think from a application standpoint, you can imagine a very generic first-party product. Like a ChatGPT I think the word is out. We're sort of distributing it now in a pro version, but it probably is never going to become something that fulfills a very specific task in your life. In part because we want the platform to enable people to build those products, and also in part because it's probably just not it's not in pursuit of AGI.
Right. When will Codex be fully released? Right now it's in beta and there's a request limit. You've heard this one?
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to still get this question. Very soon. I think on behalf of the team, we want this. We want to release this. There's no good excuse. We should get it out, and I'm told soon. For those of you on this and those of you listening, if you're building something exciting with Codex and you've run up against a rate limit or something like that, please email us, and you can email me Zach@openai.com, and we'll happily try to unblock you.
That's great. I know people appreciate that. Big news today: expanded partnership with Microsoft, investment, an indication that more and more OpenAI will live in Microsoft products and services. What can you share about that relationship and what we expect to see throughout this year?
Yeah, it's it's really exciting for a lot of reasons. I think not least of which is that Microsoft has sort of continued to prove that it is. It's a titan of industry that has sort of outlasted and sort of will continue to outlast a lot of companies for a lot of reasons, not least of which is their foresight on a product basis, their go-to-market prowess, their engineering chops. They have been an incredible partner to my team, to the product team. Obviously, Sam and Satya have a really meaningful relationship. I think that everyone should expect there to be co-product development, co-marketing, co-enterprise development. They've announced their Azure offering, which we're really excited to support, and we do. So I think, I think it's probably just a springboard and a catalyst to a lot of really exciting work.
That's great. Given GPT got HIPAA compliance today, how does OpenAI plan to create healthcare solutions?
Yeah, talk about one way that Microsoft could supercharge OpenAI, right? So the Azure AI service I think if it's not already, it's going to be HIPAA compliant. I'm embarrassed, I don't know. But I'm almost certain if it's not, it will be very soon. This is going to be something that they just sprint at faster than us. HIPAA compliance requires, just a bunch of red tape, and it is of a few hours ago. Great. Okay. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Andre. But I think, so this is going to be one of these areas where, they're going to enable a bunch of work that we couldn't, because there's red tape that they, it's a Goliath. They can cut through that stuff faster, and they're sort of designed to as a business. That said, I think, healthcare is I don't think there's anyone that thinks it's an industry that isn't ripe for disruption. The question is, does it happen on the provider side? Does it happen on the insurers? Like, where does it come from, and who's actually incentivized? This is the question we ask a lot at OpenAI, like, who's actually incentivized to help drive this forward? And that is unclear to me, but Microsoft will certainly help their customers who are trying to do it cut through a lot of the compliance red tape.
We have this audience as builders, creators, founders, right? We have 70 plus participants at this event. What advice would you give them about, where to focus? What do you find compelling in terms of new applications on the horizon, which would really benefit from OpenAI's foundational models?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a bunch of party lines, but I'm just going to give my personal spin, because I think that's important, or my personal opinion. Everyone in this room who's ever invested money has lost money in ed tech, but I actually think this is the opportunity. I think now is the time where people start making money. Like, I know that people have been saying that about ed tech for years. I don't even see people list it. Like, I don't even see Sequoia listed as like a consideration anymore in their, but I actually think that now is the time to invest in ed tech, to build it, to put money into it. The consumer confidence in public education is at an all-time low, sort of across political and socioeconomic spectrums. Students America's falling behind on education standards. Universities are getting harder and harder to get into for no good reason other than NIMBYism. So it's like, okay, obviously this is ripe. And then all of a sudden this thing comes along that can, we could build customized tutors. We could, we can do on the fly testing. You can imagine a world where kids who don't want to wake up at 7 a.m. can now learn at the hours that they're excited to learn, because teachers are willing, their customized tutor is willing to stay awake with them all night. And I think it starts slow, right? I don't think that people wake up one day and go, ChatGPT is my teacher now. But I think you could easily imagine a world where the average American high school student or junior high school student has a private tutor powered by AI that knows how they learn, that knows where they're struggling, that can give their parents recommendations, and can sort of update them on how they're performing. That's going to happen. And I don't think it's one winner take all. I think it's going to happen across a few different modalities. So I'm really excited about ed tech, and I think there's probably no more noble of a cause. Look, if I were going to start a company tomorrow, there's probably two that I would start. The first is I think there's management consulting for everyone to be built here. Imagine the scale of a research and advisory firm like Gartner or Forrester. So take all of their data and the nuance and customization of a Bain at McKinsey, and embed all of these Harvard Business Reviews and all this data, and then sell on a subscription basis a on-call consultant to Main Street. a family that owns 3 IHOPs and is they're trying to figure out how to, better price their menu. I mean, this should exist. This will improve quality of businesses. This will improve quality of life, likelihood of success. Everyone's got an interest in this because small businesses default. Banks can't manage that. So, I would probably go start. I would probably go start that. And then I think, and there's all this like talk on Twitter, like, is prompt engineering going to be a business? I don't know, but I do think that there's a huge business. There's a huge cottage industry around supporting people who are building applications and trying to disrupt using this technology. And I think just generally becoming an expert in it will serve people pretty well. So that's my. I mean, the big one obviously is search. The party line, I think this is going to transform search. And I think search and e-commerce, I think everyone believes are going to pretty quickly change. And by the way, I agree. I don't disagree. I like to give my own spin.
That was great. So we have a founder who brought an idea in ed tech that's beaming right now, Radic. So you made some people's days today with that. So that's fantastic. We've got another question here about fine-tuned models might become increasingly important as competitive advantage for business. Will there be any difference in using fine-tuned models versus the original models in terms of, I'm thinking around difference in cost and in service?
Let me answer what I think is being asked, but I might be totally off. So basically, like, one of the questions, I'll answer the question that I get asked most often about fine-tuned models. The risk with fine-tuned models is that if you go fine-tune your own model, the risk is that OpenAI launches another version, like the next version of GPT, and you're like, oh, I put all this money and all this work into this fine-tuned model, and now it's sort of obsolete. And like, we do apologize for that, and like, that's actually not optimal. But I do think that zero shot is going to become more and more common. But there is like we're working on sort of like the next evolution of fine tuning, which I can't tease much more than that. But the idea is that we would actually give more power to an ML engineer using our foundational model, and allow your data as the enterprise to be even more valuable than it is today. So imagine sort of like a fine-tuned experience, but much more robust. And I think that is, we want to make it very easy for our customers to differentiate from us and from each other. Otherwise, it gets really, really murky and really crowded. So, and regarding cost, yeah, fine-tune is definitely more expensive, but I think on the whole, it should be worth, like, if it works, it should be well worth it.
That's great. Another question here more about the future, kind of this theme of what happens with OpenAI in this year in 2023. Do you see a different product extensions, things we're not asking you about but that could be on the horizon that'd be interesting?
Is there anything you're not asking me about that is on the horizon and interesting? Yes. Am I going to talk about it here? No. I think that what a lot of people don't realize right now is how fast the large enterprises are moving. So the one thing that I updated on in the last, so we thought that this year was going to be a slog with the enterprise, and that startups were going to sort of race out in front, and then there was going to be a bunch of acquisition activity, and like people were going to get caught by surprise. And I think what's good for everyone, honestly, is that everyone is updating quickly and moving fast, which I think is like a rising tide that will float most boats. But I have been very surprised by how quickly, usual suspects, like if you had said to me, hey, who are the 50 companies that you think should be adopting this, I would have put together a wish list and sort of laughed about, is their CEO, is so-and-so actually going to get on board with this? And then you see, Benioff, rage tweeting about ChatGPT, and it's like, yeah, actually people are updating really quickly and product teams are mobilizing. So I think that's going to be pretty exciting for the end consumer, because all of I hope and expect that most of our experiences, or most of our like product experiences, are going to update quickly. I think for founders, it's just more, it's just fuel. Like, it means that you're skating to where the puck is going. And you just got to build differentiated experiences, because what these enterprises have is distribution. What you have is no product yet. And it's not clear which one's more valuable.
Great. Here's a question. Matt spoke in the last session about middleware layer as an interesting investment channel. What do you think about that? I mean, how do you think about it in terms of on top of foundation models and your partnerships with these various emerging companies?
Yeah, most people in this room know more about middleware than I do. I like roughly know what the term means, so I'm not going to pretend to know what ML middleware actually looks and feels like. I will say that I think the industry, I'm not even going to call it cottage, the ecosystem around, I already saw someone today tweet about, instead of ML ops, they tweeted LLM ops, and that's like now a big thing. That's happened not seemingly overnight, but like very quickly. I am sure that many of these companies will become very big. And we are really excited to work with all of them. I take as many meetings now as I can with folks in the ecosystem to figure out how we can help and how we can get people introduced to our customers. And our general opinion is like, great, build and let us help you, or tell us what we can do better. And in many respects, I take these calls to dispel a lot of this like closed AI myth, because we're really trying to work inside of the ecosystem well.
Great. Matt mentioned LangChain. We also have Dusk presenting later this week, so we can go deeper throughout the week on that. I think this is an interesting question. If every app relies on ChatGPT, it could hurt diversity and creativity. How does OpenAI plan to mitigate this risk?
It won't surprise anyone in this room. I don't think that I don't think that the risk of AI is gonna, well, actually, maybe it would. I don't know, but I'm generally more of an optimist, period. So that's my prior, and I don't worry too much about the future. I never have, but like I certainly don't today. I see so much hand wringing. I mean, I guess I see a lot of hand wringing around how are these models going to students are going to cheat more, and what about art? And it's like this same hand wringing happened when we got the internet. Like I remember people were like, what are all these kids going to do? All these kids are going to see all these bad things. And I think it's true that there will be weird consequences to this. And one of them may be that students use this to plagiarize content or like to create works that are not their own. But I think that cost, like if you're willing to separate the cost of that single, short-term, weird events that we sort of update to, the long-term implications seem far more exciting around like allowing access to people who we had someone the other day who, write in, hey, I'm ADHD. I can't concentrate at school. I've never been able to finish a paper. I've never been able to sit down for more than 15 minutes and write. And like, I can sit down and write now. Like I have all these like incredible ideas flooding my mind. We had a guy, I was in tears. We had someone write in to say, I'm paraplegic. I'm writing in, I've authored this note. This is the longest letter I've written in like 9 years, using your prompt. And we were like, holy shit. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I don't need to hear any more hand wringing. Like in the same way that people didn't, the hand wringing about the car and the hand wringing about, the internet, the hand wringing about nuclear that we all, fell victim to. Like there have been a lot of like these seminal moments where people are like, what if? And it's like, yeah. And also we're going to unlock a ton of creativity and a ton of opportunity that we just can't imagine right now.
And on a related note, a popular question came through, what is your strategy around handling bias in the training data?
That's a great question, and something that I do think there's like the appropriate amount of hand wringing. Generally, safety and alignment gets the attention that it deserves. I'm not a safety and alignment expert. Or a policy expert. I can say that, and so I won't say much to it. But what I can say is that OpenAI obviously has prioritized this, and we have a lot of leadership and a lot of firepower around these issues. bias is something that, we've worked a lot on. And I think if you look at Dolly, if you work inside of ChatGPT, you'll see it start to default to far more neutral, genders, races, etc., than it did when we launched. And so we're constantly updating the model, and I think it will be a persistent challenge for a long time.
Yeah. I think there's a good question here. How you differentiate GPT-3 API versus ChatGPT API? What type of applications would you use for one versus the other?
So GPT-3 comes in, a few flavors, right? Dolly, DaVinci, Ada, Babbage, Curie. There are more supercharged engines on the site. My strong suggestion, instead of telling you how they differentiate, is to go try them. Like, go use them for your application, see how they perform. There probably will be the ChatGPT API available. But again, and I say this to everyone, it's just DaVinci series. You can get access to it today with a little bit of work. You can basically get the ChatGPT results. And I encourage everyone, because without knowing what you're actually trying to build, to just try each model and see what serves you best.
Okay. So I want to come back to EdTech. You mentioned that as a scenario, like in your personal opinion, you would go after, and this is the time, maybe at the technology unlock, the need for innovative approaches to education. But how do you work with academia, in this time now where they're banning ChatGPT and schools and in colleges? How do you reconcile those two things?
What's the party line? I mean, yeah. There's going to be some weird there are going to be some reactions to this stuff that I think is I think really important to understand. But on the whole, I mean, look, it seems like what people are worried about is that they don't understand how it's being used. And so a lot of what we need to do is help update the policymakers and these institutions. And there's a lot of work being done right now at OpenAI on that basis. It's not happening on our team, but it's happening. I think that the opportunity in EdTech is for the providers of the publishers, the technology providers, the educators themselves, to sort of like prevail over the inherent inertia in these systems. Like, I think New York City school district banning ChatGPT, that's actually like, that's like a feature of this. Like, it's like, first it's a kickback, but I think when you hear the teachers talk about how they're using it to help grade tests, to help inspire more, better ideas, to help them write curriculums, you suddenly start to realize, like, okay, this is probably a short-term swing. The other thing, and this is what I will say to anyone working in EdTech, and this is my personal opinion, just go sell to the parents. I mean, who's not trying to ban this? Parents. Like, parents are like, yeah, cool, anything to help my kid, learn more, like have a private tutor experience. And I think at a time where, trust in the overall education system is pretty low, it's a pretty great opportunity to go approach parents. And then, honestly, if you can build a big enough system, you start to like give this to kids who can't afford it, and then it's like, it's not really the school district's opportunity to ban anymore. Honestly,
I agree with you. These are the tools of the future. Kids need to know how to use them and leverage them in the right ways. So I'm with you on all those things. Question from Sam. I worry about the spread of disinformation through foundation models. Do you have thoughts on how we can mitigate the potential for this in the future?
Yeah, misinformation is one of the many things, one of the few big things that policy alignment, public policy, product policy, and safety all work on together. And it's just a huge, I mean, if you try to write like political speech, I mean, ChatGPT has a lot of guardrails for good reason. And this is one of the things, I think it's one of the risks with open source models, quite honestly, which is like, everyone's clamoring for this stuff to be publicly, open source, but it's like, okay, at what cost? And misinformation is so fresh and, cause a lot of complications in this country, and I think it's pretty important that we be really careful about what these models can do before we just let people do anything with them.
Kind of gets back to me a little bit back to the ed tech. There was another question that came in about creating plagiarism detection software. Kind of gets back into some of the things that some of the colleges and schools are worried about. Is that something you think about getting into, kind of creating those types of features and capabilities?
No. Well, I shouldn't say no. We there are like holistic solutions to the problem is knowing whether something has been created by AI, right? Like that is like the global problem, and there are a lot of solutions to that, or a few solutions to that. Well, I won't even extrapolate. You can sort of guess at them. And then the question is like, should the solution exist on our end, on the front end, or sort of on the back end with someone else? Lots of people are sort of thinking about this problem. Again, I think this will be a solved problem in the not too distant future. I think it will, we will have tools to sort of know if something is human created or not. And certainly it's like pretty critical when it comes to academic work. I also think you can imagine a future where AI starts to get cited and is actually a contributor in academia.
That's interesting. Question from Nikhil. Are there plans for making GPT models perform better in non-English languages, specifically low resource languages?
It's such a good question. It's near and dear to my heart. I spent 4 years prior to this at a large language model for the purposes of machine translation company. Yes, there's a lot of work that has gone into future models being much better at translation, and low resource and exotic languages are included. And I think there is a really exciting future where all of our modalities are fluent in basically most written or all written languages.
From Justin, how do you think the industry can reward people who contributed the raw data, text, images on which the models are trained on?
I don't have a good answer to this question, and I never have, in part because it's hard for me to know, like, we licensed. Well, I think that there's probably an interesting and elegant way to credit people who have contributed. The real complication is like, how do you know how much one individual has contributed? And I don't like that's pretty hard problem to solve. Like what percentage of like the overall, if you take, 1 billion data points, like what percentage have you and I contributed? I don't know that there's an actual good way of knowing that. But I do think there's a future where the work that we do, you can imagine a world where OpenAI has an app store of sorts, and people who are contributing to that environment get credit for like the prompts they're designing, the apps they're designing, etc. The other problem, and sorry, just one other, the other problem here is in history, none of us have ever given financial credit. Like we write, like I didn't give financial when I wrote a bunch of stuff in college, and like the person who, the people I cited didn't get financial credit. And we have this like history, like we don't actually have a good system of like there's royalties, which Hollywood is based on, but it's like a really perverse system. And we don't have a really good, like apart from citing, we don't actually have a good way of like, we've basically just been, default, thanking, complimentary thanking people for a long time. So anyway, it's a weird problem.
We've got a question from Josh here. Will the model be trained on more recent data, fresh data, like post 2021? How do you think about kind of the weighting of data that the model's trained on?
Yeah, on regarding model weighting, there is this risk of recency bias. So and there are people much smarter than me who work on that. I think you could imagine a world where a model is, connected to an internet.
All right, I'm going to throw out unless we see anything else come through here, a kind of a last question. And this was about advice for founders who are, clean sheet, really trying to bring an innovation to market, leveraging, in this inflection point in AI, which is foundation models and all the potential, that's unlocked through it. What would you recommend to this group?
Well, let me answer a question that someone asked me earlier today, which I thought was pretty good, which is like, if you quit your job tomorrow, and you wanted to do that, you wanted to work in this, where would you start? Like, what would you do? And I have never struggled to answer a question that feels so simple more, I think. But what I would say is, right now there's an incredible groundswell. Like, there's a bunch of garbage, honestly, on Twitter and LinkedIn about 50 ways to better use ChatGPT, and there's like a ton of noise that's, I think, really distracting. And honestly, like, this meta concern that we're actually just going to inundate ourselves in bad content. But there are some really exciting things happening in both our forum and the open source communities right now, and in startup communities. And if you are connected to founder communities, I've never seen more energy in startup communities in the 15 years I've been in the Bay Area. And I basically encourage anyone who's ever thought about starting a company, or who's thinking about it, to get involved now through any means possible. I mean, the accelerators are at capacity. I mean, everyone is, again, I live in San Francisco, I'm a little biased, but San Francisco does feel like the energy is shifting. People are coming back. There are just far more events, and go and just start connecting in these forums and in these spaces to find like-minded people. Because every time I go to some dinner, go to some place, there are people just thinking of the most incredible ways to deploy this stuff, and it's all updating really quickly. So that's, I don't know, maybe lazy advice, but I think it's the best I can give at this point, because there's so much noise elsewhere, but there's a ton of really exciting stuff happening in groundswell, which is really cool. And to the extent that you get good at this stuff, if you don't want to work at a startup, I have a lot of friends who are now more risk averse than ever, who are like, hey, I really want to work in AI, but I don't want to work at a startup. Every enterprise right now is hiring, prompt engineers, AI experts, ML engineers, and developers to help integrate this stuff into their technologies. And I mean, there is no shame in that. If you've got a mortgage and a family, and you're like, hey, startup life is too risky, there's a ton of stuff to be built with. I think it's never been more exciting to build in an enterprise in some respect, because they all have to go reinvent themselves now.
Zack, thank you so much. This was the perfect way to kick off our speaker series. Thank you, and we'll wrap up this session.